Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when the world moved at a pace so leisurely, it would probably give your modern smartwatches an existential crisis. Imagine for a moment that you're not nestled in your cozy bed, perhaps with the soft glow of a screen or the distant hum of traffic, but rather, you are sitting by a gently flickering fire under a thatched roof in a secluded corner of ancient China. The air, surprisingly clean and crisp, carries the faint scent of damp earth and perhaps a whisper of wood smoke. Your day has been, shall we say, unhurried. You've probably spent it observing the clouds, maybe shooing a particularly persistent chicken, or perhaps attempting to invent a truly comfortable rock. There are no notifications, no deadlines, just the quiet rhythm of the natural world. If you were truly there, you'd probably find the lack of instant gratification deeply unsettling, perhaps even fatal to your highly evolved need for Wi-Fi. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, gently tap in your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle back. The straw mat beneath you surprisingly less itchy than you'd anticipated, and you listen to the soft crackle of the embers. The story we're drifting into tonight begins not with a grand emperor or a sweeping battle, but with a simple, curious individual, known to legend as Shen Nung, the divine farmer. Now, you might picture a bustling laboratory filled with beakers and Bunsen burners, but in this ancient era, your laboratory was simply nature, and your experimental subject, often yourself, yeah, if you were Shen Nung, possessed a truly remarkable, if slightly reckless, curiosity. It's said, and this is a mainstream historical fact woven into the fabric of Chinese legend, that Shen Nung was an early emperor or cultural hero, credited with teaching his people agriculture and, crucially for our purposes, herbal medicine. He was apparently a tireless researcher, meticulously tasting hundreds of plants to discern their properties, whether they were healing, harmful, or just odd. Imagine his days, not rushing from appointment to appointment, but rather a slow, deliberate process of identifying plants. You'd carefully pluck a leaf, maybe a berry, chew it thoughtfully, and then wait. Perhaps you'd feel a slight tingle, a sudden drowsiness, or a disconcerting rush of energy. And then you'd note it down, probably on a bamboo slip or carved into a tortoise shell, because paper was still a few millennia off. The truly quirky or fringe tidbit about Shen Nung, and one that sounds distinctly like a bedtime story someone concocted after too much strong herbal tea, is that he supposedly had a transparent stomach. Yes, transparent. This mythical anatomical marvel allowed him to observe the immediate effects of the ingested herbs on his internal organs. No need for invasive procedures. Just a quick glance. Handy, if a little disturbing to contemplate before drifting off. One particularly sweltering afternoon, you, as Shen Nung, are resting under a wild tea tree. You've been experimenting with various leaves to cleanse your body after ingesting something particularly enthusiastic. Perhaps a mushroom that made your toes wiggle with alarming vigor, or a root that caused your ears to glow faintly in the dark. A gentle breeze rustles through the branches above, and a few leaves, perhaps already slightly wilted from the sun, drift down into your cauldron of boiling water. This wasn't some fancy teapot, mind you. This was likely a crude clay vessel over an open flame. Boiling water for hygiene, a crucial step in your self-preservation efforts. You eye the leaves with a mild suspicion, but your thirst, combined with your insatiable drive for botanical knowledge, compels you to try the infused liquid. You lift the simple ladle, the steam carrying a surprisingly subtle yet refreshing aroma. You take a cautious sip, and then another. A warmth spreads through you, not just from the hot water, but something else. A clarity, a gentle easing of the minor discomforts from your previous, less successful experiments. You feel a quiet alertness, a calm focus settling over your mind. It wasn't a jolt like ginger or the heavy calm of valerian root, but something entirely new. It was a subtle awakening, a peaceful lucidity that didn't disturb your growing desire for a nap, but rather perfected it. This, dear listener, was likely the genesis of tea as a beverage. Not a grand, eureka moment with fireworks and trumpets, but a quiet, accidental discovery born of persistent curiosity and a bit of luck. Historians still argue whether Shen Nung was a single individual or a composite figure representing generations of accumulated agricultural and herbal knowledge. Was it truly an accidental discovery of leaves falling into boiling water, or a more gradual, observational process of noticing the properties of the Camellia sinensis plant? The exact timing of tea's intentional cultivation versus its wild use as a medicinal herb is another fascinating scholarly debate, a gentle ripple in the vast ocean of ancient history. What is certain, however, is that this humble plant, stumbled upon perhaps by accident, began its slow, deliberate journey from a wild remedy to a cherished, calming ritual. You can almost feel the slow rhythm of those early days. No rush to market, no frantic production schedules. Just the quiet observation of nature, the careful selection of leaves, the patient boiling of water. It's a stark contrast to our hurried lives, where every second is accounted for. Imagine the luxury of time, of simply being with a plant, understanding its nuances. It's almost enough to make you wish you could trade your ergonomic chair for a slightly less ergonomic rock and a pot over an open fire. Almost. The lack of proper sanitation might give you pause. But let's stick to the calming aspects, shall we? This initial accidental brew wasn't about refined taste profiles or elaborate ceremonies yet. It was about discovery, about finding a quiet comfort in a simple, unexpected infusion. It was the first gentle whisper of a journey that would span millennia and touch countless lives, all starting with a curious sip in a very, very ancient garden. The world was still mostly wilderness, and you, as an ancient pioneer, were charting its very first quiet, delicious maps. That subtle awakening you felt, that gentle clarity from the chance infusion of tea leaves, was just the very first whisper of a much longer, much slower story. Because for a long, long time after that initial, oops, delicious moment, tea wasn't really a beverage as you understand it. It wasn't about savoring delicate notes or appreciating a perfect steep. Oh no. For centuries, the leaves of Camellia sinensis were more often treated as, well, let's just say a very fibrous supplement. You wouldn't find ancient Chinese hipsters comparing roast levels or advocating for single-origin brews. Their relationship with tea was far more primal, less about pleasure and more about pragmatism. Imagine, if you will, that you are one of these early tea enthusiasts. You've noticed that chewing on these particular leaves seems to give you a bit of a lift, perhaps helps with that persistent headache from too much contemplation, or maybe even makes you feel less lethargic after a big meal of, well, whatever ancient grains were available. So you'd simply pluck the fresh leaves directly from the bush. You can almost feel the slightly rough, waxy texture between your fingers. You'd pop them into your mouth, just as you might a wild berry, assuming you've already checked if it's poisonous, a skill you've painstakingly acquired, perhaps through trial and error with that transparent stomach of yours. The taste, not the soothing, earthy notes you might expect. It would be intensely bitter, astringent, almost puckering your mouth. It wasn't exactly a delightful snack, more like nature's own slightly aggressive palate cleanser. This mainstream historical fact is crucial to understanding tea's journey initially. Tea was primarily a medicinal herb. It was brewed not for leisure, but for ailments. You might have heard whispers of its purported ability to cure a fever, to help digestion, or to simply clear the head. When you were feeling a bit under the weather in ancient China, your version of chicken soup might have involved a handful of tea leaves tossed into a simmering pot alongside other ingredients. Maybe some ginger root, a bit of salt, perhaps even some onion. You'd boil it down into a thick, rather unappetizing broth. It was medicine, not a relaxing evening brew. You'd likely pinch your nose and gulp it down, probably muttering something about how modern medicine had better figure out how to invent something tastier. One truly quirky or fringe tidbit about these early medicinal applications is that tea was sometimes combined with rice and other grains to create a kind of thick, gruel-like porridge. Imagine starting your day not with a refreshing cup, but with a bowl of tea porridge. It sounds less like a comforting breakfast and more like a punishment for oversleeping. You'd slowly chew through the mixture, the bitterness of the tea leaves mingling with the starchiness of the grains. It was designed to be nourishing, to provide energy, and, presumably, to help you feel generally less ancient. It's a far cry from the delicate porcelain cups and refined sips of later centuries, isn't it? You're essentially consuming a hearty, albeit unglamorous, tea-infused meal. No fancy milk frothers or sugar cubes here, just raw, unadulterated botanical power. As you consider these primitive forms, you can almost feel the texture of the raw leaves on your tongue, the bitter aftertaste lingering. It makes you appreciate your modern comforts, doesn't it? The ability to simply turn on a kettle, grab a prepackaged tea bag, and enjoy a perfectly balanced brew without having to forage in a wild forest or consult a mythical transparent digestive system. These early tea consumers weren't concerned with the subtle nuances of terroir or the precise temperature of their water. They were focused on survival, on health, and on finding anything that could alleviate the general discomforts of ancient life. Historians still argue whether the transition from medicinal herb to widely consumed beverage was a swift cultural shift or a gradual evolution over many dynasties. Was it the simple act of removing the accompanying herbs, leaving only the leaves, that began the transformation? Or was it a more complex interplay of philosophical ideals and social developments? It's a fascinating scholarly debate that swirls gently, much like the steam from an ancient cauldron, over the centuries. What's clear is that this journey was slow, painstaking, and utterly devoid of anything resembling a Starbucks drive-thru. You see yourself, perhaps experimenting with different ways to make this bitter leaf more palatable. Maybe you tried roasting it over an open flame, hoping to mellow its harshness. Or perhaps you discovered that drying the leaves in the sun made them easier to store and, surprisingly, less intensely bitter when rehydrated. These weren't grand culinary innovations, but rather the quiet, incremental discoveries that shaped human interaction with the natural world. Every subtle change in preparation, every new way of consuming these leaves, was a tiny step forward in tea's long march towards becoming the calming, ubiquitous drink we know today. Think of the patience required. No written instructions, no YouTube tutorials, just observation, trial, error, and the occasional mild stomach upset. It was a testament to the perseverance of early humans, their willingness to keep trying, to keep learning from nature. You probably wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes trying to figure out if that weird-looking root was a lifesaver or just going to make your tongue turn purple. But for these ancient pioneers, it was just another Tuesday. And in their quiet, determined efforts, they were slowly, unknowingly, paving the way for the refined, comforting tea ceremonies that would emerge millennia later, destined to help countless souls drift off to sleep. You've seen tea as a wild, accidental discovery, then as a slightly unappetizing medicinal gruel. Now, as the centuries drift by like wisps of steam from a forgotten pot, you begin to witness a pivotal shift. Someone, somewhere, with a foresight you can only admire or perhaps pity, given the amount of backbreaking labor involved, had a truly revolutionary thought. What if we didn't just find this plant? What if we grew it? This wasn't some snap decision made over a morning scroll. It was a slow, contemplative realization, likely born from observing the best wild tea bushes thriving in particular environments. So, you find yourself observing the dawn of organized tea cultivation. You're not in a perfectly manicured row of bushes yet. Instead, you're on the gentle slopes of a misty Chinese mountain. perhaps in what would one day become Sichuan or Yunnan. The air here is always damp, the clouds often clinging to the peaks like shy spectators, providing the perfect humidity and diffused sunlight that tea plants simply adore. You're watching hands, strong and calloused, carefully tending to saplings. These weren't seeds just scattered willy-nilly. These were likely cuttings taken from the most vigorous, healthy wild plants. It's an early form of agricultural ambition, fueled by the growing understanding of tea's unique properties. This mainstream historical fact, the transition from foraging for wild tea to intentional cultivation, marks a monumental step in tea's journey, establishing the very first tea gardens. These weren't sprawling plantations, mind you, but rather small, precious plots, guarded like a hidden spring. Imagine the sheer physical effort involved without the benefit of modern machinery. You're carefully turning the soil with rudimentary tools, perhaps a sharpened stick or heavy hoe. You're probably hauling buckets of water from a nearby stream if the mist isn't doing its job. And you're doing it all with a quiet stoicism, because in this era, every meal, every comfort was hard-earned. There's a certain, dare I say, glamour to imagining ancient farming, until you remember the splinters, the dirt under your nails, and the distinct lack of ergonomic design in your farming implements. But the rewards, a reliable source of this invigorating leaf, must have been worth it. Once harvested, the tea leaves needed to be preserved. You can't just leave them lying around. They'll spoil. So, you witness the first truly basic processing methods. The simplest, most ancient, was sun-drying. You'd spread the freshly picked leaves thinly on large bamboo mats, perhaps on a sunny clearing or on a flat rock. The sun, a benevolent giant, would slowly, gently pull the moisture from the leaves. You can smell it a subtle, grassy aroma at first, gradually deepening as the leaves begin to dry and wither. It's not the complex, nuanced fragrance of a modern tea factory, but a primal, honest scent of nature being gently coaxed. A quirky or fringe tidbit about these early processing methods might involve the use of specific, seemingly unrelated objects to aid the drying or shaping process. For instance, some early methods involved placing the semi-dried leaves near a specific type of wood fire, not for roasting, but for the subtle imparting of smoke, or even pressing them between heated stones to create a rudimentary tea brick. Imagine carefully pressing a handful of leaves with a heavy, warmed stone, hoping to create a dense, storable block. It sounds a bit like trying to make artisanal paper with a rock, but it was surprisingly effective for preservation. This not only preserved the leaves, but also concentrated their essence, making them easier to transport and, crucially, allowing their calming properties to be enjoyed far from the mountain slopes. Historians still argue whether these earliest forms of processing were discovered by accident or through deliberate, methodical experimentation. Was it merely a happy coincidence that drying and pressing improved the flavor and longevity? Or were ancient minds already grasping the subtle chemistry at play? The exact sequence of steaming, sun-drying, or light roasting in different regions is another fascinating scholarly debate, a quiet conversation among those who piece together the whispers of the past. But what is undeniable is that these crude yet effective techniques laid the groundwork for all future tea processing. You can almost feel the texture of those early tea cakes or compressed bricks. They wouldn't be the delicate, artfully molded pure cakes you might see today. These were rugged, earthy blocks, designed for practicality. You'd chip off a piece with a small knife, or perhaps even just your fingernail, then toss it into your boiling water. The resulting brew would be stronger, more robust, perhaps even a bit muddy, but infinitely more consistent and portable than wild foraged leaves. This meant tea could begin its slow journey down from the mountains, moving beyond just the local villagers and into the nascent settlements and markets. This transition from wild to cultivated, from raw to processed, represents a profound shift in humanity's relationship with tea. It moved from a chance encounter to a deliberate partnership, from a fleeting comfort to a reliable staple. You are standing in that ancient tea garden, might not realize the immense impact of these simple actions. But every careful planting, every gentle drying, every crude pressing was a silent testament to the growing appreciation for this humble leaf's power to calm, to clarify, and to bring a quiet moment of peace into an otherwise demanding world. It was the birth of an industry, but an industry still deeply connected to the earth, whispering promises of tranquil moments to come. You've felt the quiet hum of scholarly contemplation infused with tea, witnessed the gentle whisking of powdered leaves. But where did this refined ritual truly unfold? Where did these ancient intellectuals find the perfect backdrop for their poetic musings and philosophical debates? As you drift further into this tranquil narrative, you are now invited into the very heart of their serenity, the scholar's private tea pavilion, or, more broadly, their meticulously crafted tea garden. This wasn't just a room, it was a sanctuary, a quiet universe designed for the delicate art of sipping and thinking. Imagine yourself stepping over a threshold, perhaps a weathered stone path leading you away from the more bustling parts of a scholar's estate. The sounds of daily life begin to fade, replaced by the gentle rustle of bamboo, the distant murmur of a stream, or perhaps the soft chirping of crickets. The air grows cooler, cleaner, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp soil and blooming flora. This mainstream historical fact highlights how integral these dedicated spaces became from the Tang dynasty onwards. Specialized tea pavilions and gardens evolved into sophisticated architectural forms, meticulously designed to create an environment conducive to tea appreciation, meditation, and scholarly discourse. They were retreats, havens from the clamor of the outside world, designed for quiet connection with nature and self. As you gaze around, you notice the aesthetic. It's not about opulence or grandiosity, in fact, it's quite the opposite. The prevailing design philosophy here is one of simplicity, natural harmony, and unassuming elegance. The walls might be unadorned, perhaps a soft earthen plaster or natural wood, allowing your eyes to rest without distraction. There's a deliberate emphasis on natural light, filtering softly through paper screens or open apertures, creating a play of shadows that shifts with the slow progress of the sun. You might spot a carefully placed rock, weathered by centuries, or a single, perfectly pruned bonsai tree, each element chosen not for its individual flashiness, but for its contribution to the overall sense of tranquility. It's the kind of minimalist decor that would make a modern interior designer weep with joy, or perhaps despair at the lack of things to fill. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit about these spaces sometimes involved very specific, almost imperceptible, design features meant to enhance the sensory experience in subtle ways. For example, some tea pavilions were constructed with a shallow pool or a specific type of stone near the entrance, designed to create a faint, almost subliminal echoing sound of dripping water, guiding the mind towards a state of calm. You wouldn't immediately notice it. It was just a gentle suggestion, a quiet auditory whisper in the background. Or perhaps a scholar would keep a single, oddly shaped gourd in a prominent spot, not for its beauty, but because its peculiar form prompted a particular philosophical thought. It's the kind of subtle influence that makes you wonder if they were just brilliant designers or master manipulators of the human psyche. Historians still argue whether the minimalist aesthetic of these tea spaces was primarily influenced by the austere principles of Chan Buddhism, which sought enlightenment through meditation and simplicity, or if it evolved organically from a practical need to create an uncluttered environment for focused contemplation. Was it a deliberate philosophical statement, or simply a very effective way to avoid tripping over excessive furniture during a particularly deep thought? It's a scholarly debate as quiet and thoughtful as the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. You ease onto a low, woven mat, perhaps made of rice straw or soft bamboo. The air is still, but fresh. You might notice a small, exquisitely crafted window, perfectly framing a view of a single branch of cherry blossoms or a distant mountain peak. This isn't accidental. Every vista is a carefully composed painting, designed to draw your eye towards the beauty of nature without overwhelming your senses. The focus is on the moment, on the subtle beauty that surrounds you. There might be a small, low table before you, polished smooth by countless hands and centuries of contemplation. On it, you'd find only the essentials for the tea ceremony: a teapot, perhaps a few bowls, a water kettle simmering gently over a charcoal brazier, its warmth a comforting presence. The scent of the charcoal, clean and subtle, mingles with the fresh air. This environment was a deliberate counterpoint to the busy, complex world outside. Here, time seemed to stretch, expanding to accommodate quiet reflection. These tea pavilions weren't just for drinking tea, they were spaces for meditation, for poetry composition, for calm conversations, and for art appreciation. You could imagine a scholar sitting here for hours, not speaking, simply observing the light shift, feeling the warmth of the tea bowl, and allowing thoughts to drift like clouds across a clear sky. It's a concept of true relaxation that modern life, with its constant demands, often forgets. No multitasking allowed here, just singular, focused peacefulness. The design of these spaces also subtly influenced the tea ceremony itself. The small, intimate scale encouraged close proximity and quiet whispers, fostering a sense of shared intimacy and understanding. The connection to nature, through views and natural materials, reinforced the philosophical links between tea and the natural world, reminding you of the plant's humble origins in the misty mountains. You realize that the very architecture was part of the experience, guiding your mood, softening your thoughts, and preparing you for a profound encounter with a simple cup of tea. It truly was a holistic approach to unwinding, proving that sometimes the best way to get ready for a good night's sleep is to simply be still in a beautiful, quiet place. You're settled comfortably in that serene tea pavilion, the quiet hum of contemplation filling the air. You've appreciated the space, the atmosphere, the very essence of tranquility. But now, your attention drifts to the star of the show itself, the tea. You might assume that tea in ancient China was just tea, a single undifferentiated brown liquid. Oh, how delightfully wrong you'd be. Even in these early centuries, particularly during the Tang dynasty, the discerning palate of the scholar had already begun to demand, and thus create, a nuanced world of tea varieties. It wasn't about mass production, it was about subtle distinctions, about understanding the whisper of the leaf. Imagine the tea master before you, not just preparing any old brew, but carefully selecting a specific tea cake or tea brick. This mainstream historical fact is crucial in the Tang dynasty. Tea was predominantly consumed in compressed forms, not as the loose leaf you might enjoy today. The freshly picked leaves were steamed, then pounded or pressed into dense cakes or bricks, sometimes with intricate designs or imperial seals. You might see a cake, dark and compact, that looks more like a small, edible paving stone than a bag of Earl Grey. It's practical for storage and transport, certainly, but it also means the preparation involves a few more steps than simply dunking a bag. As the tea master carefully chips a piece from this cake, you notice its texture. It's dry, firm, and holds a deep, earthy scent, quite different from the fresh, grassy aroma of green tea leaves you might encounter in a modern tea shop. This cake could have been aged too, a concept that would later become a hallmark of certain tea types like pu'er, which you might know of today. Aging was a happy accident turned deliberate practice. What was initially just long-term storage sometimes resulted in a mellowing of the tea's sharper edges and a deepening of its character. It's like finding that your forgotten socks in the back of the drawer are suddenly vintage and valuable. You'd then observe the careful grinding of this chipped tea. It's a slow, rhythmic process, often done with a small stone mill. The resulting powder, a vibrant jade green, or perhaps a darker, richer green, depending on the tea's processing, is what will be whisked into your bowl. This practice of grinding tea into powder and whisking it directly into hot water was the predominant method during the Tang dynasty, a style that would later be perfected and popularized in Japan as matcha. You are witnessing the very foundational steps of that tradition. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit from this era describes how some scholars believed that the quality of the tea was not just in its cultivation or processing, but also in its provenance specifically, the mountain it came from. They might obsess over a tea from Cloud Mist Peak versus Dragon Well Mountain, not just for perceived taste differences, but for the very spirit of the mountain they believed was imbued in the leaves. You might even hear tales of specific tea bushes that were guarded by ancient spirits, their leaves possessing extraordinary calming powers. It's the kind of dedication that makes modern brand loyalty look rather flimsy. Historians still argue whether the distinctions between these early tea varieties were based purely on geographic origin, subtle processing variations, or perhaps the social status of the people who consumed them. Was the concept of green tea as a distinct category fully formed? Or were there many local variations that blurred the lines? The precise methods by which early tea makers controlled oxidation, the chemical process that changes green tea into oolong, or black tea is another fascinating scholarly debate, a gentle puzzle for modern tea masters and historians alike. It's complex, considering they didn't have sophisticated chemistry labs, but they had centuries of practical wisdom. You're learning to discern the subtle nuances. A scholar might comment on the pine needle fragrance of one tea or the mountain mist aftertaste of another. These weren't just poetic embellishments, they were genuine attempts to describe the unique character of each brew. The taste for these ancient connoisseurs was a symphony of quiet notes, a hint of sweetness, a touch of bitterness, a lingering freshness. It wasn't about adding sugar or milk, it was about appreciating the raw, unadulterated essence of the leaf itself. They would also pay close attention to the color of the liquor. Some teas, like the powdered green tea, would yield a vibrant, frothy jade green. Others, perhaps a more lightly roasted or sun-dried tea, might produce a clearer, golden hue. Each color held its own aesthetic appeal and promised a unique experience. It was a visual feast as much as a taste sensation, all contributing to the gentle art of tea appreciation. So, as you slowly sip your carefully prepared bowl, you understand that these ancient Chinese scholars weren't just drinking tea. They were engaging with a world of subtle differences, a universe of unique flavors and aromas, each one carefully cultivated and processed to bring forth its particular calming essence. It was a practice of deep appreciation, of slowing down enough to notice the minute variations that passed unnoticed by the hurried eye. It's a gentle reminder that sometimes, the most profound experiences come from truly slowing down and savoring the quiet details. One delicate, ancient sip at a time. You've explored the quiet sanctity of the tea pavilion, felt the texture of the compressed tea cake, and even learned to appreciate the subtle differences in the ground tea powder. But imagine for a moment you're about to brew that perfect cup, and you realize something fundamental is missing. It's not the fire, nor the tea, nor the elegant bowls. It's the very foundation of your brew, the water. To an ancient Chinese scholar, water wasn't just H2O, it was the very mother of tea, a living, breathing component without which even the finest leaves would yield a lackluster, unforgivable brew. You see a scholar, perhaps the same one whose tranquil tea pavilion you've come to admire, not just taking water from the nearest well. Oh no, that would be an absolute scandal. Instead, you might find him, or his dedicated servant, embarking on a meticulous quest for the purest, most suitable water. This mainstream historical fact is critical. Ancient Chinese tea masters and scholars went to extraordinary lengths to source the right water, often ranking springs, rivers, and even specific types of rainfall, believing that water quality profoundly affected tea's taste and essence. Lu Yu, once again, even had a section in his Classic of Tea dedicated entirely to the virtues of different waters. It's like a 5-star rating system for liquid refreshment, centuries before Yelp. You might observe a collection of various water vessels in the corner of the pavilion, each holding water from a different source. One might contain water from a remote mountain spring, painstakingly carried down by a mule. This water, having trickled through granite and soil for ages, is believed to be living water soft, clean, and subtly sweet, enhancing the tea's delicate notes. Another vessel might hold water drawn from a specific stretch of a pristine river, chosen for its gentle flow and consistent purity. You can almost feel the softness of the mountain spring water as you dip your finger into it, a distinct lack of the harshness you might associate with tap water. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit about this obsession with water purity involves the practice of collecting dew. Yes, you heard that right. Dew. Imagine waking before dawn, often in the chill of the morning, and carefully, painstakingly, collecting individual droplets of dew from lotus leaves or bamboo stalks. This dew water was considered exceptionally pure and light, believed to lend an ethereal quality to the tea, a kind of distilled essence of nature itself. It sounds less like a practical water source and more like a meditative exercise in extreme patience. You'd probably spend half the morning trying to get enough for a single cup, then immediately want a nap. It's a level of dedication that makes modern bottled water connoisseurs look like absolute amateurs. Historians still argue whether these intricate water preferences were solely based on empirical observation of taste. Different mineral compositions do affect flavor, or deeply rooted in philosophical and spiritual beliefs about the vitality and purity of natural elements. Was it simply ancient chemistry, or a poetic understanding of water's role in the cosmic harmony of tea? The practicality of transporting water from distant, specific springs for daily use is another fascinating scholarly debate. How much of this was truly common practice versus an ideal pursued by the most dedicated and wealthy scholars? It's a delightful trickle of uncertainty in the clear stream of history. You also learn that rainwater, particularly from certain seasons, was sometimes collected. Not just any rainwater, mind you. You wouldn't just stick a bucket out during a downpour. Instead, it would be collected from a clear, clean rooftop, or directly from the sky in specially designed earthenware, avoiding contact with pollutants. Well water, too, was used, but it had to be from a well known for its deep, clean source. Not just any old hole in the ground. The scholar would even consider the age of the well, believing older wells might yield water with more character. The meticulousness extended to storage. Water wasn't simply left in an open bucket. It was often kept in large, unglazed earthenware jars, which allowed the water to breathe and maintain its cool freshness. You can almost hear the subtle gurgle as water is carefully poured from one of these large vessels into a smaller kettle for brewing. This wasn't just about keeping the water cool, it was about preserving its energetic qualities, its living essence. So, as you watch the scholar prepare to brew, you see that the water is given just as much reverence as the tea leaves themselves. It's heated slowly, gently, never allowed to boil violently for fear of killing its delicate life. The first wisps of steam are observed, indicating the perfect temperature has been reached. This deep respect for water, this understanding of its profound influence on the final brew, is a quiet testament to the ancient Chinese scholars' holistic approach to tea. It wasn't just about combining ingredients, it was about creating harmony, a gentle balance of elements that would ultimately lead to that perfect, calming cup, ready to lull you into a peaceful slumber. You've seen the serene setting, felt the quiet wisdom of the scholars, and even understood their deep reverence for the right tea and the purest water. But now, as you settle deeper into this ancient scene, your gaze falls upon the silent protagonists of the tea ceremony, the tools. These weren't just random kitchen implements. They were meticulously crafted objects, each designed with a specific purpose, contributing to the harmonious rhythm of the tea ritual. To an ancient Chinese scholar, each brush, each scoop, each bowl was an extension of their peaceful intent, a physical manifestation of their pursuit of tranquility. Imagine the small, low table before you, bathed in the soft, diffused light of the tea pavilion. On it, a collection of objects rest, each seemingly simple, yet radiating a quiet elegance. This mainstream historical fact is pivotal to the evolution of specialized teaware. From kettles and grinding mills to whisks and bowls, became a hallmark of refined tea culture, particularly flourishing from the Tang through the Song dynasties. Lu Yu, once again, painstakingly described each tool in his classic of tea, assigning them poetic names and detailing their proper use, elevating them from mere utensils to objects of art and contemplation. It was like a very specific, very calm assembly line of serenity. Your eyes might first be drawn to the kettle, often made of bronze or cast iron, designed to hold the carefully sourced water. It sits poised over a small, silent charcoal brazier, the glowing embers providing a gentle, consistent heat. You can almost hear the soft, almost imperceptible hiss as the water begins to warm, a sound that doesn't disrupt the tranquility but rather enhances it. The brazier itself is often a work of art, perhaps adorned with subtle patterns or engravings, reflecting the scholar's appreciation for beauty in every detail. Next, you might observe the tea mill, a small, elegant device used to grind the compressed tea cake into a fine powder. It usually consists of two stone discs, or sometimes a small wooden roller moving over a trough. You can almost feel the gentle weight of the tea master's hand as he slowly, methodically turns the handle. The soft, rhythmic rasp of stone on stone, a calming counterpoint to the quiet atmosphere. This isn't the loud whir of an electric grinder. It's a meditative sound, a slow transformation of the tea into its ready state. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit from this period revolves around the tea whisk, or chaxian. While today we might associate a bamboo whisk primarily with Japanese matcha, early versions of this tool were integral to the Tang Dynasty powdered tea ceremony. Some whisks were not just simple bamboo, they were said to be made from a specific species of aged bamboo that grew only on certain auspicious mountains, and only harvested during a particular lunar phase. The number of tines on the whisk was also sometimes prescribed, with certain counts believed to produce a more harmonious froth or connect the drinker to a specific energy. It's the kind of meticulous detail that would make a modern barista scratch his head. Historians still argue whether the elaborate designs and materials of some ancient tea tools were purely functional, enhancing the taste or ease of preparation, or if they were primarily aesthetic statements, reflecting the social status and refined tastes of the scholar. Were these tools truly indispensable for a good brew, or did they serve a more symbolic role in the ritual itself? It's a scholarly debate as intricate and delicate as the patterns on a prized ceramic tea bowl, a quiet discussion that continues to steep in the academic world. You also see the tea bowls themselves, not mugs with handles, but wide, shallow bowls, often made of exquisite ceramic celadon, jade green or subtle, earthy glazes. Their shape is designed to allow the tea to cool quickly, to display the vibrant color of the whisked liquid, and to fit comfortably in both hands, conveying warmth and connection. You might notice a tea scoop, a small, delicate implement, often made of bamboo or ivory, used to transfer the precise amount of powdered tea from its container to the bowl. Every action, even scooping, is deliberate, never rushed. There might also be a small tea brush, used to sweep any stray tea particles back into the mill or to clean the surface of the tea table, ensuring impeccable neatness. This attention to cleanliness and order was part of the holistic experience. A tidy space reflected a tranquil mind. It's the kind of fastidiousness that might make you think twice about just leaving your tea bag wrapper on the counter. Each tool, from the large kettle to the smallest brush, was treated with reverence. They were cleaned meticulously, stored carefully, and used with a graceful precision that spoke of deep respect for the tea and the ritual. They weren't just objects, they were partners in the journey to quiet contemplation. You realize that the very act of preparing tea with these tools was a form of active meditation, each step slowing down the mind, focusing the senses, and preparing the spirit for the gentle embrace of the brew. In a world full of frantic activity, these scholars found their calm in the beautiful simplicity, and perhaps the slight extravagance of their tea tools. You've just witnessed the meticulous artistry of the brewing ritual, that slow, deliberate dance of hands and tools, transforming powdered leaf and pure water into a serene liquid. As you hold the warm bowl, the delicate froth resting on its surface, you might feel a profound sense of quietude. But for the ancient Chinese scholar, this was just the beginning. Beyond the taste and the warmth, beyond the physical act, lay a universe of philosophical meaning in every single sip. Tea, for them, wasn't just a drink, it was a liquid metaphor for life, a pathway to enlightenment, and a silent teacher of universal truths. Imagine that you are a scholar in this era, deeply immersed in the philosophical currents of Taoism and the burgeoning influence of Chan Buddhism, what you might know as Zen Buddhism. These schools of thought, with their emphasis on natural harmony, simplicity, and the pursuit of inner peace, found a perfect, unassuming embodiment in tea. This mainstream historical fact highlights how profoundly tea culture became intertwined with these spiritual and philosophical movements in China. Tea was seen as an aid to meditation, a gentle catalyst for intellectual clarity, and a humble vehicle for connecting with the profound rhythms of the universe. It was a kind of drinkable wisdom, available in every teacup. As you sip, you feel a subtle awakening, a clarity that doesn't agitate but rather soothes the mind. This was the essence of tea's philosophical appeal. For Taoists, tea embodied the concept of Tao, the natural, effortless flow of existence. It was simple, unadorned, yet profoundly effective, much like the Tao itself. You might contemplate the inherent modesty of the tea leaf, thriving in quiet mountains, offering its essence without fanfare. It encourages you to shed artificial complexities, to embrace simplicity, and to find beauty in the unpretentious. It's the ultimate anti-status symbol, ironically embraced by those with the highest status. For practitioners of Chan Buddhism, tea was a crucial aid in their meditative practices. The gentle caffeine in tea provided a sustained, focused alertness without the jitteriness of stronger stimulants, allowing monks and scholars to sit for long hours in contemplation. You might picture a monk, eyes half closed, perfectly still, with only the warmth of a tea bowl in his hands. The brewing ritual itself, with its repetitive, mindful actions, became a form of moving meditation, each step stripping away distractions, bringing the mind back to the present moment. It was a tangible pathway to achieving satori, a sudden moment of enlightenment, or at least a really good nap. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit from this philosophical realm involves the concept of the tea's empty space. Some scholars believe that the empty space within the tea bowl, or the quiet stillness between sips, was as important as the tea itself. This emptiness was not a void, but a fertile ground for thought, for spiritual connection. For the Tao, you might hear a scholar muse that the foam on the tea represented the fleeting nature of earthly existence. While the clear liquid beneath symbolized the eternal truth, it's a wonderfully profound way to look at a drink, elevating it from a simple beverage to a canvas for deep introspection. Historians still argue whether the philosophical interpretations of tea were inherent from its earliest adoption, or if they were retrospectively attributed by intellectuals seeking to find deeper meaning in their favored beverage. Was tea's calming effect discovered first, and then philosophies built around it? Or did existing philosophies guide the way tea was cultivated and appreciated? The exact degree to which Taoist versus Chan Buddhist thought influenced specific aspects of tea culture is another fascinating scholarly debate. A gentle ebb and flow of intellectual currents that has continued for centuries. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of the tea spreading through you. You imagine the ancient scholars doing the same, perhaps contemplating the interconnectedness of all things: the mountain that nurtured the tea, the water that dissolved its essence, the hands that prepared it, and the mind that received its quiet gift. This connection to nature, to the raw elements, was paramount. Tea was a reminder that true wisdom often lay not in complex theories or grand pronouncements, but in the simple, fundamental processes of the natural world. The bitterness of tea, too, held a philosophical lesson. Life, like tea, has its moments of bitterness, its challenges and difficulties. But just as the bitterness of tea can give way to a lingering sweetness, so too can life's hardships lead to profound understanding and peace. It's a gentle lesson, delivered one warm sip at a time, a reminder that even the less palatable moments have their place in the grand design. So, as you slowly, thoughtfully consume your tea, you feel a profound connection to those ancient scholars. You're not just drinking a beverage, you're engaging in a timeless practice, a silent dialogue with centuries of wisdom. The tea helps you to quiet the chatter of your own mind, to shed the day's anxieties, and to simply be. It's a reminder that true relaxation isn't always about escaping reality, but about finding a harmonious way to engage with it, inviting a profound calm that prepares you perfectly for a night of deep, peaceful rest. You've delved deep into the profound philosophical meanings ancient scholars found in their tea, discovering that each quiet sip was a pathway to harmony and enlightenment. Now, as you continue your journey through their world, you realize that tea served not one, but two equally vital purposes for these contemplative minds. It was both a cherished companion for solitary contemplation and a gentle catalyst for shared intellectual gatherings. It truly was the versatile beverage of choice for both the ancient introvert and the discerning extrovert. Imagine yourself first in the quiet solitude of a scholar's study, perhaps illuminated only by the soft glow of an oil lamp or the pale moonlight filtering through a paper screen. You see a scholar, perfectly still, a single tea bowl held delicately in his hands. In these moments, tea was an utterly personal experience. It supported long hours of reading ancient texts, meticulously transcribing scrolls, or simply allowing thoughts to drift like clouds across a serene sky. This mainstream historical fact is clear tea served as an indispensable aid for individual meditation, study, and quiet reflection, allowing scholars to maintain focus and mental clarity during their solitary pursuits. It was their ultimate do not disturb sign, brewed in a cup. The quiet warmth of the bowl, the subtle aroma, the gentle clarity that spread through the mind after a sip. These were tools for introspection. You might imagine the scholar using the repetitive movements of preparing his own tea as a form of meditative practice. Each scoop, each whisk, each pour, grounding him firmly in the present moment, stripping away the distractions of the outside world. There were no interruptions, no notifications, just the rhythmic calm of existence. It was a space for the mind to wander freely yet purposefully, guided by the gentle, steadying presence of the tea. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit about solitary tea drinking involves the belief that the perfect environment for profound contemplation required absolute silence, to the point where even the sound of a falling leaf was considered a distraction. Some scholars reportedly would only take their solitary tea during specific astronomical alignments, or when the moon was at a certain phase, believing these cosmic conditions enhanced the tea's meditative properties. It's the kind of dedication that makes you think they'd be really good at winning silence contests. Probably. Historians still argue whether the solitary aspect of tea drinking was more prevalent among the reclusive Taoist sages, emphasizing individual enlightenment, or if it was simply a practical necessity for busy scholars who found their only true peace in private moments. Was the introspective side of tea paramount, or did its role as a social lubricant eventually overshadow it? It's a scholarly debate as quiet and nuanced as the lingering aftertaste of a perfectly steeped oolong, a gentle question that continues to be savored in academic circles. But then, the scene subtly shifts. You now find yourself in the same tea pavilion, but it's no longer solitary. Instead, there are two, three, perhaps a handful of scholars gathered. The atmosphere is still serene, but now it hums with a different energy, the soft murmur of conversation, the quiet laughter that punctuates a shared joke, the gentle clinking of bowls as they are passed. Here, tea transforms into a social catalyst, fostering an environment of camaraderie and intellectual exchange. In these shared gatherings, tea became the common thread. You might witness a group of poets, perhaps a little creatively blocked, finding inspiration in the shared warmth of a fresh brew. They'd discuss the nuances of a newly composed verse, debating a particular character or an evocative image, their arguments flowing as smoothly as the tea from the spout. Or perhaps philosophers would engage in a polite yet spirited debate on a complex point of logic, their minds sharpened by the tea's clarity. The shared act of preparing and consuming tea built bonds. There was a quiet etiquette, a mutual respect for the ritual and for each other's presence. Passing a bowl of tea was not just an exchange of liquid, it was an exchange of warmth, of shared experience, of silent understanding. It fostered a sense of collective calm, allowing deep thoughts to surface in a relaxed, non-competitive environment. It was like their version of a book club, but with far more graceful hand movements and less discussion about who brought the least impressive snack. Tea, in this context, encouraged a unique blend of intimacy and formality. It wasn't about raucous revelry, it was about refined discourse. The measured sips and thoughtful pauses were as important as the spoken words, allowing ideas to fully form and be absorbed. It allowed for a level of quiet connection that is often lost in our louder, more hurried modern social interactions. So, whether a scholar sought the profound insights of solitary contemplation or the gentle stimulation of intellectual camaraderie, tea was always there, a steadfast and calming presence. It adapted, seamlessly flowing from the private moments of the self to the shared experiences of friendship and learning. It understood that sometimes you need to dive deep within yourself, and sometimes you need to quietly connect with others. And in its dual role, tea offered a timeless lesson. Finding balance between your inner world and your outer connections is a powerful pathway to a truly peaceful existence, readying you for the deepest, most tranquil sleep. You've seen how tea seamlessly wove itself into the fabric of scholarly life, equally at home in quiet solitude and gentle camaraderie. But for the ancient Chinese scholar, tea was more than just a companion for contemplation or conversation. It was a potent muse, a subtle key unlocking the doors of artistic expression. As you continue to drift deeper into this tranquil history, you'll discover how the humble tea leaf became a silent, yet powerful collaborator for poets and painters, guiding their hands and sharpening their minds. Imagine a poet, perhaps one of the giants of the Tang dynasty like Li Bai or Du Fu, sitting in that very tea pavilion. The air is still, the world outside hushed. Before him, a freshly brewed bowl of tea, its delicate steam curling upwards like a nascent thought. This mainstream historical fact is undeniable. Countless poems, paintings, and calligraphic masterpieces from the Tang and Song dynasties were either directly inspired by tea or created in its calming presence. Tea was seen as a catalyst for clarity, a gentle stimulant that didn't jolt the senses, but rather refined them, allowing the artist to perceive the world with greater sensitivity and insight. It was the ancient world's version of a creative flow supplement. You might observe the poet, his brush poised over a scroll, searching for the perfect phrase, the ideal image to capture a fleeting moment of beauty or a profound philosophical insight. He takes a slow sip of tea. The warmth spreads, and with it, a subtle shift in perception. Suddenly, the words begin to flow, unforced, like a mountain spring after a gentle rain. The tea, with its quiet clarity, helped to quiet the inner chatter, allowing the true voice of inspiration to emerge. It was a partnership. The poet brought the talent, and the tea brought the serene focus. Consider the intricate discipline required for Chinese calligraphy and ink wash painting. Every brushstroke is deliberate. Every line holds immense meaning. Every blank space is as important as the inked form. Such artistry demands absolute concentration, a stillness of mind that few stimulants can truly provide without also inducing jitters. Tea, however, offered that perfect balance. You can almost see the painter, his eyes calm and focused, his hand steady as he applies a delicate wash of ink to silk, the aroma of his tea mingling faintly with the scent of pine ink. The quiet act of brewing and sipping was preparation, a meditative prelude to the creative act. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit related to tea's artistic inspiration involves certain poets who believed that drinking tea from a specific type of jade bowl or a bowl with a particular celadon glaze would enhance their poetic genius. They thought the bowl itself, with its aesthetic qualities and perhaps its perceived spiritual purity, could channel the muse. You might hear whispers of a poet who would only compose verses after drinking tea brewed from rainwater collected on a specific day of the year, convinced that such tea held the true essence of the heavens, ready to be translated into words. It sounds like a charmingly elaborate excuse to avoid writer's block, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether tea's role in inspiring art was purely psychological, providing a sense of calm and focus, or if its subtle stimulating compounds genuinely enhanced cognitive functions related to creativity and memory. Was it the ritual itself, or the chemical properties of the tea that truly unlocked these artistic gates? The precise nature of tea's influence on specific artistic movements or the individual styles of different poets is another fascinating scholarly debate. A gentle ripple in the tranquil lake of art history. You watch as the scholar takes another sip, his gaze drifting towards the meticulously arranged garden outside. Perhaps a single plum blossom branch, outlined against the paper screen, catches his eye. The tea deepens his appreciation for its delicate beauty, and a new line of poetry forms in his mind, crisp and clear as the mountain air. It's a moment of profound connection between the artist, the art, and the quiet, humble leaf that facilitates it all. Tea also fostered a unique form of artistic critique and appreciation during social gatherings. Remember those shared scholarly moments instead of rowdy debates? You'd find artists and poets quietly presenting their works, and the discussion would often be centered around the shared experience of tea. This poem, a scholar might muse, has the refreshing clarity of a freshly whisked tea, or this painting evokes the deep, aged character of a perfectly stored tea brick. Oh, it was a common vocabulary, a shared aesthetic, all grounded in the quiet, reflective presence of tea. So, as you observe these ancient minds at work, you understand that tea wasn't just a beverage. It was a partner in creation, a silent muse that nurtured the very soul of Chinese art. It provided the clarity needed for deep thought, the focus for intricate brushwork, and the tranquility to absorb the beauty of the world and translate it into timeless works of art. It's a gentle reminder that sometimes the best way to invite inspiration is not to chase it frantically, but to simply sit still, take a calming sip, and allow the quiet muse of tea to find you, leading you gently towards a peaceful sleep. You've explored how tea transformed into a profound philosophical tool and an inspiring artistic muse for the ancient Chinese scholar. But life, even for the most serene poet or contemplative monk, was rarely a continuous scroll of peaceful moments. Dynasties rose and fell, political winds shifted like restless spirits, and personal fortunes could change with the tide of a single decree. Amidst this often turbulent backdrop, tea offered something even more vital, a quiet, steadfast source of tranquility in troubled times. Imagine for a moment that you are a scholar living through an era of profound change. Perhaps the Tang dynasty, once so glorious, is now experiencing the whispers of decline. Or maybe you are a loyal official exiled to a remote province due to political intrigue. The world outside the walls of your quiet tea pavilion might be chaotic, unpredictable, even dangerous. Yet, within this sacred space, amidst the familiar scent of brewing tea and the soft clinking of porcelain, you find an oasis of calm. This mainstream historical fact is a testament to tea's enduring power. It consistently served as a source of stability, comfort, and inner peace for scholars and intellectuals during periods of intense political upheaval, social change, and personal hardship throughout Chinese history. It was their dependable, non-judgmental therapist, always ready for a session. The tea ritual, with its precise, unhurried steps, became an anchor in a storm. You engage in the familiar motions, selecting the tea, heating the water, grinding the leaves, whisking the froth. Each action is a small act of control, A predictable sequence in an unpredictable world. The warmth of the charcoal brazier, the gentle hiss of the kettle, the steady rhythm of the whisk. These sensory inputs create a bubble of serenity that external chaos simply cannot penetrate. It's like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket of mindfulness when the world outside is throwing a tantrum. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit from these difficult times relates to certain scholars who, when faced with extreme personal or political adversity, would embark on self-imposed tea fasts, not to abstain from tea, mind you, but to consume only tea for a period, believing that its pure essence would cleanse their minds of worldly anxieties and purify their spirit to better endure hardship. Imagine a diet of only tea, forgoing solid food. It sounds deeply unsatisfying, if undeniably serene. But for them, it was a rigorous, almost ascetic practice designed to sharpen their inner resolve and find clarity when everything else was muddled. Historians still argue whether tea's tranquilizing effect in such turbulent times was purely psychological, a comforting ritual providing a sense of agency and routine, or if the subtle physiological effects of tea, the sustained alertness without jitters, truly aided in managing stress and maintaining composure. Did it ever lead to a form of quiet escapism, hindering active engagement with pressing societal problems? Or did it provide the necessary mental fortitude to face them? It's a scholarly debate that steeps slowly, like a well-aged tea in the quiet corners of historical inquiry. You might hear a scholar, perhaps a contemporary of yours, lamenting the corruption in the court or the distant rumble of approaching armies. But then, as he takes a slow sip of tea, his shoulders visibly relax. His gaze softens. The immediate anxieties begin to recede, replaced by a sense of calm, a quiet acceptance of what he cannot control, and a renewed focus on what he can, his own inner world. The tea allowed him to find a personal refuge, a mental fortress where his spirit could remain unperturbed. It wasn't about ignoring reality, but about gaining perspective. This wasn't just a fleeting distraction. The sustained clarity and gentle calm provided by tea allowed scholars to continue their intellectual pursuits even amidst personal turmoil. They could still read, still write, still ponder the great questions of existence, their minds unclouded by panic or despair. Tea helped them maintain their intellectual and spiritual discipline, ensuring that even if the world around them crumbled, their inner world remained intact and serene. It was proof that sometimes the most revolutionary act in a chaotic world is simply to remain calm. Think of the contrast. Outside, the clamor of war drums, the whispers of betrayal, the gnawing anxiety of uncertain harvests. Inside, the quiet hiss of the kettle, the rhythmic whisking, the comforting warmth of the bowl. Tea served as a constant reminder that amidst change and discord, there was always a path back to simplicity, to harmony, to an inner stillness that no external force could truly break. It was a gentle, daily reaffirmation of resilience, a sip of unwavering peace. So, as you feel the quiet comfort of your own bed, knowing the world outside continues its busy churn, you understand the profound gift that tea offered to these ancient scholars. It was more than just a beverage. It was a sanctuary in a cup, a quiet promise of tranquility in even the most turbulent of times. And as you imagine them finding that profound peace, you too can allow the gentle story of their calm to guide you towards a night of deep, undisturbed, and utterly peaceful sleep. You've seen tea rise from a wild leaf to a profound philosophical aid, a calm companion in both solitude and social settings, even a refuge in times of chaos. But how did this intricate knowledge, this deep appreciation for the leaf and its ritual, survive the ebb and flow of dynasties, the shifting sands of history? As you continue your gentle descent into the past, you'll discover the quiet, deliberate ways in which tea wisdom was passed down, ensuring its enduring legacy for millennia. Imagine yourself observing not just a single tea ceremony, but a lineage of them, stretching back through generations. The knowledge wasn't simply stumbled upon and then lost to time. It was meticulously cultivated, much like the tea plants themselves. This mainstream historical fact is crucial. The preservation of ancient Chinese tea culture relied heavily on a combination of rigorous written classics, most notably Lu Yu's Classic of Tea, but also through robust oral traditions, intricate master-apprentice relationships, and dedicated family lineages. It was a multi-layered system, ensuring that this calming heritage wouldn't simply vanish with a changing regime or a forgotten scholar. You might see an elder scholar, his hands gnarled by age and practice, patiently demonstrating the precise angle of a whisk to a young, eager apprentice. There's no quick manual here, no frantic YouTube tutorial. Instead, it's a slow, repetitive process of observation, imitation, and gentle correction. The apprentice isn't just learning how to brew tea, he's learning how to feel the tea, how to listen to the water, how to imbue each movement with intention. It's a process that demands absolute presence and deep respect for the tradition. Forget your modern attention spans. These sessions could last for hours, days, even years, until the knowledge became second nature. The written texts, like Lu Yu's masterpiece, served as invaluable anchors. Imagine scrolls, carefully preserved, detailing everything from the best water sources to the ideal shapes of tea bowls. These weren't just instruction manuals, they were philosophical treatises, cultural manifestos that provided a blueprint for tea appreciation. You might find yourself poring over these ancient texts, deciphering poetic descriptions that hinted at profound truths about harmony and balance. It's like finding the ultimate, most beautifully handwritten cookbook for your soul. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit about the transmission of this knowledge involves the use of highly specific, often poetic, mnemonic devices. To remember complex brewing sequences or the nuanced characteristics of different teas, scholars might compose short, rhyming verses or even develop intricate hand gestures that served as silent reminders. You might even hear tales of certain tea masters who could identify the exact mountain and year a tea leaf was harvested just by touch and smell. A secret passed down through generations that defied any simple explanation. It sounds almost like an ancient secret handshake for tea connoisseurs, ensuring only the truly dedicated could master the subtle art. Historians still argue whether the fidelity of oral traditions was truly consistent over centuries, or if certain techniques and philosophical interpretations subtly shifted with each new generation of masters. Was the monumental shift from the powdered tea of the Tang and Song dynasties to the loose-leaf tea of the Ming dynasty a mainstream historical fact, marking a significant evolution in tea culture, a natural progression driven by taste, or a deliberate philosophical rebellion against the complexities of the past? It's a scholarly debate that unfolds as slowly and gracefully as the unfurling of a perfectly steeped tea leaf. As you drift through the centuries, you observe this quiet evolution. The methods might change. The elaborate whisking of powdered tea gives way to the simpler, yet equally profound, steeping of whole loose leaves during the Ming dynasty. Perhaps because scholars grew weary of all that grinding. This shift was significant. It allowed the natural beauty of the leaf to shine, simplifying the ritual while deepening the appreciation for the tea's inherent qualities. It was a move towards even greater naturalness, a gentle rebellion against overly elaborate ceremony. But despite these changes, the core principles endured: the reverence for water, the appreciation for quality leaves, the emphasis on mindfulness and preparation. The understanding of tea as a pathway to calm these elements remained constant, woven into the very fabric of Chinese culture. You see how tea, through these dedicated individuals, became more than just a passing fad. It became a living tradition, a quiet testament to the power of shared knowledge and persistent practice. You realize that every time you enjoy a calming cup of tea, you are indirectly partaking in this ancient lineage. You are connected to those meticulous scholars, those patient masters, who ensured that the simple, profound wisdom of the tea leaf would not be lost. They passed down not just techniques, but a way of being with tea, a philosophy of quiet contemplation that transcended time and turmoil. And as you feel the gentle echo of their dedication, you can allow this timeless wisdom to guide you now, towards an utterly peaceful, truly well-earned sleep. You've traversed millennia, from the mythical accidental discovery of Shen Nung through the crude medicinal brews, the birth of cultivation, the golden age of scholarly appreciation, the meticulous tools, the meditative rituals, the profound philosophies, and the tea's steadfast comfort in troubled times. You've witnessed the quiet wisdom passed down through generations. Now, as our gentle historical journey approaches its conclusion, you realize that the story of ancient Chinese scholarly tea is far from over. Its essence, its quiet power, continues to resonate, shaping the way we find calm even in our bustling modern world. Imagine, if you will, looking out from that serene ancient tea pavilion and seeing not just misty mountains, but a glimpse of your own present day. You see tea, not confined to distant Chinese mountains or scholarly circles, but a global phenomenon, consumed in countless forms across every continent. This mainstream historical fact is undeniable. The foundational practices and philosophical underpinnings developed by ancient Chinese scholars laid the groundwork for tea culture worldwide, influencing traditions from Japan's elaborate chanoyu to England's stately afternoon tea, and even your humble tea bag today. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of what these ancient minds discovered. The very act of seeking a moment of calm, of finding clarity in a cup, is a direct echo of those ancient scholars. You might not be grinding tea bricks or collecting dew from lotus leaves, but when you mindfully choose a particular tea, steep it with care, and savor its warmth, you are inadvertently performing a modern iteration of their ancient ritual. You're giving yourself a mini retreat, a gentle pause in the relentless march of your day. It's their wisdom, repackaged for your comfort. A truly quirky or fringe tidbit connecting past to present is the phenomenon of silent tea cafes popping up in modern cities, where patrons are encouraged to eschew phones and conversation in favor of quiet contemplation over a cup. Or perhaps the contemporary fascination with slow living movements, which inadvertently mimic the unhurried pace of ancient tea ceremonies. Valuing intention over efficiency, it's as if those ancient scholars are subtly nudging us through time, whispering, "See, we told you to slow down." You might even laugh softly, imagining a Tang Dynasty sage shaking his head at your multitasking, then gently handing you a bowl. Historians still argue whether modern tea consumption, particularly in the West, truly retains the philosophical depth and meditative intention of its ancient Chinese origins, or if it has largely been reduced to a simple beverage for hydration or a caffeine boost. Has the global spread diluted its spiritual essence? Or has it simply found new expressions relevant to contemporary life? It's a scholarly debate as diverse and sprawling as the world's tea plantations, a gentle query that brews continuously in academic thought. You see that the enduring relevance of ancient tea wisdom isn't about rigid adherence to historical practices, but about embracing the spirit behind them. The emphasis on harmony between human and nature, between self and others, is still profoundly relevant. The pursuit of simplicity, the beauty and minimalism remember those tea pavilions, is a counter-narrative to our often overwhelmed lives. The practice of mindfulness, of being fully present in the moment of preparing and consuming, remains a powerful antidote to modern distraction. Even the humble tools have their modern equivalents. Your electric kettle, while lacking the poetic charm of a charcoal brazier, serves the same purpose of heating water. Your porcelain mug, though perhaps mass-produced, still cradles warmth and comfort. The quiet moment of savoring your tea, perhaps while looking out your window at the modern world, is a direct lineage from a scholar gazing upon his bamboo grove, finding peace in the mundane. This legacy isn't just about the drink, it's about the attitude. It's about cultivating an inner sanctuary, regardless of your external circumstances. It's about finding profound meaning in the ordinary, turning a simple daily habit into a source of peace and clarity. The ancient scholars, one with their patient hands and contemplative minds, gifted us not just a beverage, but a blueprint for a more serene existence. So, as the story of the ancient Chinese scholars and their calming teas comes to its quiet close, you realize that their wisdom is not a relic of the past, It lives on in every gentle swirl of steam, every comforting warmth of a cup, every moment you choose to slow down and simply be. Their legacy invites you to embrace tranquility, to find your own quiet rituals, and to let the enduring spirit of their peaceful practices wash over you, preparing you perfectly for a night of deep, utterly dream-filled sleep. The light fades, and the final whispers of ancient wisdom settle gently around you. You've journeyed far, through misty mountains and tranquil pavilions, carried by the subtle aroma of tea and the soft cadence of history. Now, the bustling world recedes, its demands growing distant and hazy, like faint echoes on a far-off shore. Feel the comforting weight of your blanket, the softness of your pillow, as your body begins to relax, sinking deeper into the quiet embrace of your bed. The ancient scholars have shared their secrets of serenity, their pathway to peace, and now that peace is yours, let their quiet contemplation guide your thoughts, dissolving any lingering worries, leaving only a profound sense of calm. The gentle hum of ambient sound, the soft ebb and flow of your breath are all that remain. Allow yourself to float effortlessly on this peaceful current. You are safe. You are still. You are completely at peace. Sweet dreams.